Hello viewers, I am here once again to explain a very beautiful poem written by our very own Nissim Ezekiel. The poem entitled Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T. Now you can sense the humor from the very title of the poem. So before I enter into the explanation part of the poem, let me give you a brief detail about Nissim Ezekiel and this particular poem. It is written by Nissim Ezekiel and he is India's foremost Indo-Anglian poets, one of the India's foremost Indo-Anglian poets. He was born in 1924 and was educated in Mumbai and London. He produced several volumes of verse and plays and was an art critic. He died in 2004 at the age of 79. A Marathi-speaking Jewish Indian English poet who studied at Mumbai, retired as Professor of English at the University of Bombay. His verse collection includes Time to Change, 60 Poems, The Unfinished Man, Hymns and Darkness, etc. Very relevant to mention here that he won the Sahitya Academy Award in 1983. Now, what are the general themes of Ezekiel's poetry? The theme of his poems consist of love, sex, alienation, death, loneliness, Indian scenes, urban life and of course spiritual values. Ironic perception and the distancing of emotions have been his major focus. Now, while I give you the general themes of Ezekiel's poetry, we are supposed to be extracting these themes from the prescribed poem, that is Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T. To give you a brief introduction about the poem is a part of his collection Hymns and Darkness. It is a parody and a satire on the usage of English language by some Indians. Example, the habit of using present continuous tense in place of simple present and the rambling style of conversation with which the Indians who take English as their second language, they try to communicate. Written in the form of a dramatic monologue, where the speech made by the narrator, and he is apparently the anchor of that entire event, reflects more about him than about others or than about the person about whom the party has been organized. We move on to the text of the poem. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T. The narrator, whom we can take as a colleague to Miss Pushpa T., who is the anchor of this event, which is the farewell party organized for Miss Pushpa T. Now, the narrator begins his speech this way: Friends, our dear sister is departing for foreign in 2-3 days, and we are meeting today to wish her bon voyage. Look at the usage of departing, also bon voyage, meeting today. Now, departing and meeting, so present continuous tense. It is kind of a literal translation of as we speak in Hindi. And the usage of bon voyage is again a hyperbolic way or kind of a jargon used to impress the audience perhaps. He continues, you are all knowing friends. Again, knowing. What sweetness is in Miss Pushpa? A very chauvinist remark. I don't mean only external sweetness, but internal sweetness. It is an innocent yet a masculine description of a female colleague perhaps. Miss Pushpa is smiling and smiling even for no reason, simply because she is feeling. Now, instead of saying that she has perhaps a very pleasing personality, she has a constant smile on her face. Look at the way the narrator or this anchor is describing the personality of Miss Pushpa, which creates an intense ludicrous effect in the poem. Continuing with the poem, Miss Pushpa is coming from very high family. Now, again, any program is incomplete without giving the biographical details of the chief guest, and Miss Pushpa apparently here is the chief guest. Her father was renowned advocate in Balsar or Surat. I am not remembering now which place. The informal attitude of the narrator is reflected here. He has not the thorough information and knowledge about Miss Pushpa, and that is why he is presuming and assuming that her father had been a renowned advocate, of course, at Balsar or Surat, and he accepts the fact that he doesn't know or doesn't remember which place is it. And then he asks in a rhetorical question. This Surat with a question mark is a rhetorical question. Suddenly he remembers perhaps that the place is not Balsar, instead it is Surat. Ah, yes, once only I stayed in Surat with family members of my uncle's very old friend. Now, from Miss Pushpa, he brings the entire conversation to focus on his own self, and he says that he remembers Surat because once he had visited Surat with his family members and he had stayed with his uncle's very old friend. And he apparently remembers one very basic thing, his wife was cooking nicely. So, see how Indians are always associated, or they could establish a very good connect with food, right. So, his wife was cooking nicely, and the narrator remembers that very, very distinctly. And then he tries to bring the conversation or this episode to an end by saying that was long time ago. So, slight drift from the theme of the poem, which is actually to bid farewell to Miss Pushpa T, bringing in a personal element about his anecdote or reminiscence of his visit to Surat. He continues, coming back to Miss Pushpa, she is most popular lady with men also and ladies also. Again, a very chauvinist kind of a remark, I would say. That is what is, because in Indian offices you will perhaps find less of female employees as compared to men employees, right. And that is why Miss Pushpa's being liked by both the men as well as ladies has been distinctly remarked about by the narrator. Whenever I ask her to do anything, she was saying, just now only I will do it. Now, again, a very docile kind of an appearance of Miss Pushpa, wherein she is ever ready to do the work that has been allotted to her. That is showing good spirit, and he becomes a little judgmental by saying that proves that Miss Pushpa is a very good employee. I am always appreciating the good spirit. Again, a very, very personal remark. Miss Pushpa is never saying no. Whatever I or anybody is asking, she is always saying yes. And today, she is going to improve her prospect, and we are wishing her bon voyage. Now, today she is going to improve her prospect. Of course, we know that she is moving abroad, as has been mentioned in the first stanza of the poem itself, and improve her prospect, again a very, very typical Indian psyche, that when a person moves abroad, it is taken or it is analyzed as a meter gauge for success. And that is why he says that she is going to improve her prospect, and we wish her a good journey, safe journey. And the usage of bon voyage, again jargon in order to impress the audience. Now I ask other speakers to speak, and then he abruptly ends his message by inviting other speakers to speak, and he also adds an postscript kind of a thing that afterwards Miss Pushpa will do summing up. Now that is what kind of a protocol is for this event, which is apparently a farewell party to Miss Pushpa T. Yes. Now she is going to sum up. Instead of that, he could have said that we would invite Miss Pushpa to speak, not do the summing up. Again, an ignorant miss, perhaps because of lack of knowledge of language, perhaps. The development of thought in this poem takes place thus. The occasion is the farewell party being hosted by a group of friends and colleagues to Miss Pushpa, who is going abroad or who is moving abroad. Use of grammatically incorrect and inappropriate phrases and expressions mark the poem, bringing out the outrageous use of English by the native speakers. Examples are departing for foreign, all knowing friends, coming from very high family. So I told you that this constant use of present continuous tense is a little irksome, and then perhaps this is a different syntax, grammatical rule which we have in English language, and the natives, we the speakers who have adopted English as our second language, do not know the nuances behind the grammatical syntax. The other aberrations are incorrect use of tense, such as I am not remembering, his wife was cooking nicely, she was saying, that is showing, is never saying no, am always appreciating, we are wishing her bon voyage, etc. Of course, the attitude of the speaker is reflected through his conscious effort. Yes, throughout the poem, we could feel that he is making a constant, continuous and conscious effort in order to speak in this language and also to impress his audience. So, is reflected through his conscious effort at styling the language and the flattering tone, that is he is trying to kind of give very good feedback about Miss Pushpa. He is trying to impress Miss Pushpa. So, the flattering tone of the speech suggesting a hypocritical and sham personality. But here I would like to put forth to the viewers that the personality of the narrator is very dubious rather, because we directly cannot call him hypocritical or a sham personality. Of course, he is an ignorant and innocent person as well, because he is just behaving like a person who would do an anchoring without having a perfect knowledge of the language concerned. Miss Pushpa, although depicted as a pleasing personality by the flattering tone and the compliments which have been bestowed on her by the anchor narrator, is definitely not without the pretentious manners reflected through the speaker's line. Miss Pushpa is never saying no. Whatever I or anybody is asking, she is always saying yes. So, perhaps it is like Miss Pushpa also had been a very amiable colleague, wanting to please everyone, and that is why perhaps she could never say no to anybody and was readily doing all the tasks which have been allotted to her. The party ends with the summing up and the concluding remarks made by Miss Pushpa after the speaker invites her and other members to the dais. So, the tone of the poem is definitely humorous, although sarcastic, but yet it is devoid of any stingy bitterness, and that is the beauty of Nissim Ezekiel as a poet. He is so humorous at the denotative context, and yet he has the satire, he has the intention to rectify the Indian English speakers, but the sarcasm or the satire he incorporates in his poem, it is very, very subtle. So, the connotative meaning can be extracted as satirical, but the superficial analysis of the poem definitely is extremely ludicrous. So, with that, we come to the end of this lecture. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T is an enjoyable poem, and hope you enjoyed reading it with me. Thank you so much.